Hello, and welcome to another episode of Beyond the Eclipse. My name's Aethor, and with me, as always, is...
Hey, I'm V.
And today we're going to go over episode 4 of The Lucky Die, Magic and Misdirection.
Yes.
So this is kind of an important episode, but before we get into the episode, I want to read through the opener that V wrote out. So in this one, it is, "Welcome back, prisoners, to The Lucky Die. Previously, Balance flexes his new powers, Ralshak frees his companion from the hangman's noose, and Sultana tells Lindrin a profound truth. After having their execution nullified by a higher power, the group are offered a different kind of death at the hands of Lindrin." And I think that's it.
There are a bunch of questions, right?
Let me see.
At this point, I had settled properly into my rule of three for questions.
Yes, here it is. I've missed half of them. Will they take this new lease of death? Will Lindrin forget being called a dick? What's up with that Kythea chick? I guess we're about to find out. Welcome back to The Lucky Die.
Yep.
Intro someplace. Now I have to find my notes again. Yeah, so this episode opens on kind of it opens on kind of a weird thing where Balance is harassing Kythea basically.
Yes. It's a little awkward, but then I guess sometimes romance starts like this are kind of awkward. Yeah, and I think it really goes to highlight that Laffian doesn't have a lot of rusty social skills. I was going to say they're rusty. And that he really has lived a pampered life of he can't even cook. He's never cooked for himself. He's in prison and he's never cooked for himself. So, yeah, I think it goes really well to demonstrate that aspect of his character, and I'm really glad I managed to get that out of him.
Yeah.
And throughout the episode, you begin to realize that Kythea is a little more than meets the eye, and I think I'd managed to hint at that a couple of times before this point.
Yeah.
But the romance between them was not something planned, and it's purely coincidental that he started hitting on Kythea and she was looking for him, very literally. So yeah, it was a nice coincidence. But oh boy, I know Arch a bit. Back then I didn't know him massively, and this was just super awkward for me, but I make it my rule, if someone wants to attempt to romance an NPC, I'll give it a shot. I just might not be very good at it.
I think you play it off pretty well. That I think most of the interaction come off genuine enough. Balance is of course prodding in places where he knows he shouldn't be prodding, and Kythea has no interest in sharing, so it creates a kind of a fun dynamic where both of them are like awkwardly telling the other one to go fuck themselves.
Yes.
Yeah, and I just have it written in my note because I thought it was so funny when Casey gasps when Balance implicates that Kythea likes Caden more than Balance.
Oh yeah.
I don't know why. It's that kind of drama moment. Like, we're only on episode 4 and we already have gasps.
We already have strange romantic entanglements. We're only 3.5 hour episodes, 3.5 hours through this podcast. What is going on? Yeah, it's very funny. And yeah, Kythea never had any interest. Like most of the NPCs that are in this world, they are... unless specifically in a relationship. I basically play most characters of they could be involved with any of the main players if that's what they really want, unless it goes massively against their character. Yeah.
Makes sense. And yeah, the characters have a bit of a back and forth talking about this and that, and it
Sorry, I'm looking at my notes for that part. It's called the Pain Olympics is what I've got written down. My lot in life is so much worse than yours. They do this solidly for 5 minutes.
Oh, right.
And it makes me laugh so much. This is kind of when I was very happy that I know that they could roleplay together with no influence from me whatsoever. And that I think is good to have at a table. It's what I generally want to have when I'm a player at the table. So as a DM, I get to sit back and just let them explore characters together with no influence from me. I just interrupt them if it's possible when I feel that and I think we should be moving on moment in my chat. So But it was nice listening to them play together. It was like, yes, this group of people is going to work. Yes, we've got a core. I love it.
Absolutely. And yeah, once Kaiten goes to get the witch, you have Sultana already plotting to escape, and I
love it.
I enjoy that so much.
I've got written down Sultana's plan to GTFO is beautiful, and it really is.
It is. I've got connections. I'll get Kaiten a new job. It's fine.
I love it so much. Sultana is so practical and optimistic in this moment. It is like 100% like a really big counterpoint to Raul's negativity. Raul's had a very negative experience, and Sultana's like, well, here's my practical way of solving this problem. Problem solved. Yeah, and then walking on. Like, I love it so much. It's such a nice moment.
It is great, and I enjoy that a lot.
I do have to admit, I don't know exactly how I would have handled them breaking free of all this, but it was an option. They could have done it if they really wanted to. I just would have to have, I don't know, ad-libbed a lot on the fly, adjusted as I went.
My assumption is always that you could get them back on the railroads just by tempting them with the artifacts.
Yeah, they come across it, they do this, they get like missions to go do other stuff, and they find out they're still actually working for Lindgren or Kaiten or Demi or whoever. Like, I would have figured out a way around to get them back on track, or at least on a slightly different looking track. I would have figured it out, but luckily I didn't have to. So
a track that goes in the same direction but not the same path, you know?
Yes,
like maybe a little bit of roundabout.
Less of a diagonal straight line, more of a wibbly wobbly side to side line, which is kind of what most of our like story is anyway.
It can get quite wibbly wobbly.
Mm-hmm.
And I just enjoy how hard Casey comes into this episode. I enjoy their energy so much. They come in just like, man, I'll get him a new job, see? Yeah, we'll run away. Yeah, we'll slap a fake mustache and row. Nobody will know.
Oh my god, this is the beginning of the fake mustache, like, running gag that is in TRD. It makes me laugh so fucking hard.
It's so fucking funny. I was laughing so fucking hard at it when I was listening to this with Casey.
Oh, yeah. Beginning of the false mustache, Ra's pessimism is a great counterpoint. Yeah, like, it's just, I don't know, something about the idea of sticking a false moustache on the end of his snout it just makes me giggle, and I'd forgotten it had come in this early in the show.
Yeah, and then we have Kaiten return with Demi, and
we do.
Demi's, that's the next thing that happens basically. She comes in pretty early in the episode. I genuinely remember her coming in like episode 5, but no, she's just like on the smack dab middle of like early episode 4.
Yeah, so Demi was my vehicle to get the binding on them. I knew that keeping them together would be difficult because their characters are so different, and having them split up would be difficult to manage in a podcast when I'm trying to keep everyone together. And as a DM, you don't necessarily have to do exactly what I did, but they are so vastly different characters, and I needed a way to keep them together. And my idea was I was literally going to bind them together. And this is something that I had thought about for like how I would manage that. And this was something that I basically settled on, like, okay, I can have someone put a magic spell on them to make sure that they don't run away. And there were side effects. For example, if they had run away, if they had gone more than a certain distance from each other, there was a mechanic I had written down that would basically start giving them negatives and minus hit points and exhaustion levels until they met back up again. But they never actually split away from each other in the end at all. They didn't actually get more than a mile away from each other for more than an hour. Ever, until the bond was broken when they went to another plane of existence and away from Kaiten. So I was like, oh, well, cool. I guess it kind of worked then. They never really tested the limits. So, but yeah, I kind of wanted a way to do this, and I wanted there to be like a symbol or a mark that they could attach themselves to for a while, and obviously give them some benefits and overcome some of those, oh hey, we want to have a private conversation but we're in the middle of a bunch of other people. Oh great, I could tag that onto this binding thing, and then they can have message between themselves. So Demi was really that vehicle for getting that to them, getting that message to them, getting the idea that they are still prisoners and they are still bound, like getting that to them. So Demi delivered a lot in that scene.
Yeah, I think it's a very interesting idea, and I think it's not something I've heard. Like, I've never experienced it, at least in like in a board game setting. In like a home game. That's the word I was looking for. Where the DM just kind of goes like, I guess I've been playing with very rules-heavy people my entire life, and seeing a DM just kind of like hand-wave pretty big things and invent pretty big things that aren't like straight-up magical items or like spells with like descriptions. It's very interesting, I guess.
This really comes down to my utter ignorance of D&D. So I think I've said this a few times. I'm really not great at the system. I'm not a great dungeon master. I enjoy the storytelling. That's the thing that's the focus for me. So I don't know list of spells. I don't know list of monsters. I don't generally, or at least I didn't used to run with a lot of character sheets. There are still some characters that don't have them. Pretty important NPCs that still don't have character sheets. So a lot of it comes down to my ignorance, and also the fact that I didn't want to be bound by some of those lore or rule heavy moments. For example, you always have to somehow find a way to hand wave, oh, we're talking about big major plots, we're just going to go to the side here and have a quick conversation. In the idea of a story, you can't do that. Nope. Like the idea that we're just going to step aside and have this conversation, do you mind giving us a minute? Like that often doesn't work in a real situation, or in these situations where there are such heavy stakes to them. I'm like, okay, I will make sure you'll have message and you can just do what you want then, and then you don't have to worry about it, at least for now. So I was just happy to I'll wave it into one and we'll make it a thing, and I'll figure out the mechanics of it exactly later on. But I had like vague rules written down, and who better to break the magical rules than the head of the Witcher Society? So I was like, fuck it.
Well, the current head of the Witcher Society.
The current head of...
if this event took place about a month and a half later, the head of Witcher Society would not be breaking any rules.
Yeah, you're right. It's 2 months later, I think, that she gives it up. For the greater good, actually. For the greater good.
So I just wanted to mention this because because you mentioned like when you're having like character moments and they can't really take a side and talk to each other. I've done it more than once when I'm DMing a home game, where I basically just tell my players like, no meta talk at this point unless you have a spell that would allow you to like transfer information without other people hearing. Mm-hmm. I am assuming that the people at the table and the people that are talking to you can hear everything that comes out of your mouth for the next seconds. Just assume everything is real time. Like, I want this discussion to actually happen.
Yeah.
I don't want you guys to meta talk your way around it so everybody knows all the like intrinsic information. No, now it is time for you to be your character.
Yeah, there are definitely moments in campaigns and stories when you need to do that, especially if there is a lot of pressure on that moment. Mm-hmm. But sometimes, for example, we know that there are players at the table who are very good with the magics and with the meta of the situation, the literal, this is how a round works, this is the spells you have access to. Some of our players are very good at that, and sometimes you need to be able to transfer that information, and sometimes that has to be done off the table, out of the scene, and that information needs to be given, and sometimes you just need that moment to get that information out. And I think sometimes that's needed, sometimes it's not needed.
Of course. I'm not I wouldn't, let me rephrase it like this. I wouldn't have been unreasonable if somebody just forgets a name that I will allow somebody across the table to give them the name. It's more the wait, did we ever kill insert name? It's like, now you just set that at the table. You need to know this kind of shit. Come on.
Yeah, there are sometimes things that need to be given, and sometimes especially with newer players or less comfortable with the system players, sometimes you just need those conversations, even in character, to happen. So I was like, all right. And also, I just can't be dealing with this. We have to go to the side and have a conversation, because sometimes there are moments where you need to be able to plan strategies out, and me to cut down on those, and I'm just not going to be. I'm just going to give you a way to just simply hand way through that, and when it goes, it goes. I never actually plan for it to disappear. If they'd come up with a way of breaking it without hurting Caden, or if they'd managed to persuade Demi to break it later on, like Sailor V, that would be the case. But I'd never planned on it.
Yeah, so getting back on the episode.
Sorry.
No, don't be sorry. This is point of the episode, or the show, or whatever. We have Demi walking to the scene, and I had kind of forgotten what Demi looked like until Cassie redid some art for us.
Yeah.
And it absolutely refixed her back in my brain, because she had become this kind of like really tall, lanky lady in my head for some reason.
Yeah, that's right. It's because she has, I don't really know how to phrase it any other way. She has big dick energy about her. So it doesn't really matter her height. She's always going to feel and sound bigger because she's a larger than life character. She's very loud, very quick. She thinks quickly. She speaks quicker than she thinks, which is a scary thought. So there's a lot going on in there, and I always wanted her to be a big character, like not necessarily as big a character story-wise as she's become, but like a big memorable person, because she's the head of the Witches Society. Why wouldn't she have a fairly big personality? She's fairly young for the post, so I kind of, it's very easy to forget that she's actually a very small, very slight, punch on the arm will kind of like knock her over kind of a person, because she just has a huge aura of magic about her, and she's a very big person, I guess.
It's a big personality and a small body.
Yes, big personality, tiny body. At least for a human. I do have to go shout out to Kessie and Tian, who were just like, 5'4"? You call that short? I'm like, I'm sorry.
Some of us weren't born with huge fucking legs. Some of us are stuck in the 5-foot category.
Yeah. I mean, I'm 5'8", 5'9", something like that. I don't know. I'm not the tall. Well, I most of my friendship group back in Britain were all over 6 feet, so I felt always very short.
I'm the shortest in my friends group. Always
yes, you are. It's hilarious.
So we have Demi come in, and she's preparing to cast the binding ritual.
Yeah.
And she, Demi mentions the fucking jacket, which gave my brain a fucking runaround again, which is now a hoodie. Mm-hmm. But there's another thing that she mentioned, which is Demi says she saw a dragonborn about a year ago.
Yep.
Are we talking about Ama?
Yes.
Okay.
She was vaguely aware of Ama.
How would you just be vaguely? There's somebody who looks like a dragon walking around. You would have assumed that she would have stolen her blood. And it's a fire dragon.
You
would assume she would have stolen her blood by now. Like,
so back then, Demi only really had a vague awareness of like who was in the town. I mean, the town is still pretty big, and Demi would have been doing more leadership stuff than what we see her doing in the show, because what she does in the show is act as your knowledge bitch. So you don't really see her leading so much, and that's what she would have done up to the point of the apocalypse, the end of the world. So yeah, she wouldn't necessarily have known everyone in the town, and like, oh, there's a dragon person. I vaguely I've seen them about, but I haven't had a chance to deal with them yet. In very much her way.
All right. And then before our spell is cast, you start the joke. I genuinely thought the crew had started this joke. Is anyone wearing anything metal?
Oh yeah, that was me. I have in my notes about that. I don't know about the metal. I think I may have said this before, and maybe because I can't. So I can't do any outros as Demi, especially not in the early episodes, because Demi just takes over my mouth and I don't know what I'm doing. It very much is a stream of consciousness, and that is sometimes how my brain works. It is just, and then I hit a point. I'm like, oh, okay, great. So I just opened my mouth, let her speak, and what came out was, is anyone wearing any metal? Oh, shit, what did I do? So I don't know why that came out. I don't know where that came from, but it's a running gag that I decided to keep going. I will somehow make this a thing somewhen at some point. I just don't know when or how or what yet. I will just let her open her mouth and we'll figure it out.
Another thing that I found entirely entertaining is Demi's preparing them for the ritual, and Demi goes like, oh, you're all going to have to hold hands, and we're going to have to make like a little circle, and we're going to put Kaiten in the middle, and then blah, 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 blah. And then shit starts catching fire. And you have Demi going like, oh, I'm sorry, I did that. And Bal's like, no, calm down. Do the magic. No, I did a thing. Like, no. Do the magic. You've been in the scene for 20 minutes and nothing has happened. Stop it.
Yeah, Demi's energy that she brought into that scene was very at odds with any of the energy that we'd had previously.
Yeah. And
genuinely at the recording, I think it also kind of comes across a little bit in the episode, but there was that moment of, what the fuck is this? Who the fuck have you brought? What the fuck is this character?
Absolutely.
And there was a lot of, not exactly resistance, but what the fuck energy in that scene from everyone. And it's evolved into being more comfortable with it, but like, yeah, it was just like guys, we need to do a thing. Just grab hands. I don't know about just grab hands.
I find it so entertaining. Like you come in as Demi, and in the first like 3 or 4 minutes, you deliver the information. We're going to do a binding ritual, and we're going to need to hold hands for that, and we're going to need to put Caden in the middle. Then about 20 minutes when it comes to casting the spell, everybody's forgotten what the fuck she said at the beginning because she's just flooded the room with just unnecessary sideline information. And I find it so entertaining that the entire, like, what was it? When Demi asked them to grab hands, everyone has already forgotten what was the only thing that she asked them. Probably because he flooded them with other info.
So that is very much the origin of Demi and Damaz's characters is from a home game that Thirsty and I played. I was obviously Demi, he was obviously Damaz, and they never got a good conclusion to that story because the campaign fell apart. And I'm like, I'll put them in as a self-referential Easter egg, and I'll have them in there, and I'll have their stories play out, and like it goes on in the background, and you know, still worry about it. So I just brought her personality quirks across, which was she was a wild magic fire sorceress with psychic like fear abilities. That was actually her specialty, was to do things like Crown of Madness and cast fear and stuff. Like they were the things she was actually good at. Fire was a side tangent. And part of her personality was that she spoke extremely quickly because I didn't want to do a voice at the table because everyone made me feel weird, so I just started speaking really quickly. And it added to that every time she got like scared or frightened or overexcited, wild magic would just go off, and that was just how we decided to mechanically play that. So Demi coming in, speaking very quickly was a side effect of bringing that in. But also it has allowed me to drop a lot of information and for it to be buried, for it to be referenced back later of like, actually, this has been going on for a while. You just need to dig apart some of the shit that Demi says. So I basically have decided that Demi has a lot of information. She knows a lot from various sources. And sometimes what I know she knows spills out in my speech patterns because I don't add a lot of filter to Demi. It just comes out, which is why I could never do the outros because I kept dropping bloopers and kept dropping like freaking information that is important to the story. So yeah. So she has a lot of information, but she also lies a lot. There is a lot of manipulation that goes into some of the stuff that I say and some of the stuff I bury in the hoard of information that she drops.
Yeah, I do have that distinct feeling early on that Demi is hiding a lot.
Yes. So the one thing that I kind of remember very distinctly is she's talking about her brother. She's talking about, oh yeah, I know about gods. I know 1, I know 2. I help build walls and stuff. She's not exactly lying, but she is telling a half-truth. But nobody ever did an insight check on her. Nobody ever figured out that what she was or what she was planning or what was going on with her, that she had the voice of Grumsh in her head. That never came out because nobody ever checked what she was saying because she dumps so much information.
She
There's
really
like,
does.
what do I insight on this? And that's fair.
All right, let's get on to the bonding ritual because I have a bunch of questions about it.
Yeah, go for it.
All right, so first of all, when she mentioned and explains what's going on with the bonding ritual, Arch real quick realizes like, oh, I have a voice in my head. Am I going to be feedback looping it to everybody else? Had you even thought about this?
No, I hadn't at all. My plan was just to have Marnak be quiet. He wasn't going to, because he has a different bond with Laffian. Like, he was just going to be speaking to Laffian. It doesn't have to be broadcast in, like, the rest of the binding. So I hadn't considered this would be a thing, but Arch jumped on it. I'm like, great, this is perfect because accidentally you've hit something that has already happened with the character who's also in the scene. So fuck it, yes, we'll build on that and then you can learn more about stuff. So yeah, it's a happy coincidence.
I think Arch's thought, it makes a lot of sense.
It does massively, yeah.
It is that idea, like, oh, I think this personality is talking to me through message, and I'm about to have message like permanently put in my brain.
They didn't know about the message thing.
No, but he knew there was something going on.
Oh yeah, something clearly shady was happening.
Yeah, and then the bonding ritual starts and cue music, and you have Demi help balance erect the wall against Monarch. I think that's a really good scene. It's a very like interesting scene.
Yeah, and the music Neil puts underneath it really makes it something.
Yeah, it really, really helps.
Yeah, it was an unintended moment, I think, for that like moment of everybody helping balance to build these walls to separate Monarch from everyone else. It's just it was a very unintended moment, but the music Neil puts under it really makes it something bloody special.
Absolutely.
And it's just a good moment. It's a good scene.
And you proceed to explain and describe the casting of the spell and the effects of it. And at one point, you have them all do, I think it's intelligence saving throw or wisdom saving throws.
Yeah.
And Ral and Balance fail their saving throws.
Yeah.
And you say you say that they can hear like Caden screaming in the background.
Yeah.
But that fuses into what was the phrasing? You hear the screams of the people you've lost.
Yes.
What were you trying to communicate in the binding ritual? Like what?
Their experiences. They may not be consciously aware of it, but subconsciously, like, their fates have become intertwined. They've become bound at that moment. And it's a sharing of experiences. They're not aware of it, but they are sharing their fates. They're sharing everything they've existed so far, all of their memories. And they've all lost people in awful ways. And I wanted to communicate that, hey, this is probably a deeper binding than you're ever going to understand. Like this... You know, your fates have been bound together forever and ever and ever and a day, to a degree, until they break it. And I wanted to communicate that this was a deeper level, and hearing the screams of everyone they'd ever lost, hearing and feeling those experiences is like, yeah, you're kind of sharing something really significant here. There is a big change happening in your lives now.
Were you in any way trying to hint at the fact that they all had a significant lost one in their past?
Yeah. Yeah, because they've all lost someone. They didn't really know much about each other's characters at all, really, because they weren't present for each other's backstory episodes. So they never learned about Odette, and hang on, how come Odette isn't here? They never learned about Ama. How come Ral is here without Ama? Why isn't he visiting? And the same thing. Well, I just don't think we exactly brought up Ninverna at that point, just that Laffian was in prison. Yeah, like it was kind of supposed to be a hint that everyone had lost something, and Caden also. That Caden had also lost someone, but we never really touched on that massively until much later.
Yeah, I think it's an interesting thing. It's kind of, in a weird way, it's like a fun little story thing that has happened in the background that maybe wasn't completely planned, but it is the fact that like all the strings that brought them there are extremely similar.
Yeah, like it is that conversation I had at the very beginning with some of them, like, hey, everyone has dead chicks in their backstory. What the fuck, guys? Everyone is here for murder one way or another. What the fuck, guys? Thankfully, everybody now unfridged one way or another. But it's like, guys, you're following, I guess, yeah.
It's the obvious thing to go for, and not a single one of them is there for the murder of their significant other, per se.
Well, Ral is there for the murder of Ama. I mean, he didn't do it.
I'm saying, like, none of them are responsible for it. Like, it was a...
well, Zoltana is there for the murder of the dwarven double one who was kind of a big deal-ish in Falsum. We've never actually managed to go back and talk about like the various murders that Zoltana did, just that Zoltana did do murders. We've covered, I think, 2 of them in series or in we've at least discussed and come across in game. But yeah, Zoltana straight up in murder, like legit did what they're in jail for. yeah.
Zoltana's the only one who's in jail for what she did.
Yeah.
Then we have the you have the rune appear on everybody in the binding ritual. had you thought about that rune a lot, or was it just like, there's the 3 of them, and then there's Caden, 3 circles and a circle around it?
Most of the description of that spell and the subsequent rune, that was all improv. I just wrote down does spell, add screams, add purple magics, because I like purple. And that was literally the only reason that I wrote that down. But yeah, there wasn't a lot written down for it, and the idea of putting a brand or a rune on them came from the idea that, hey, they probably would have an after effect. There would be something that they could visibly see, and if for whatever reason they do manage to break this, then that can disappear and go away and be a good indicator that they'd broken free from this kind of prison-like escapades they find themselves stuck in.
Yeah. And then you proceed to, which is a fun little character moment, like an unintentional character moment. You have them all, once the spell is complete, you have them all test out their message. And you do that by making them say their favorite colors.
Yeah.
And unsurprisingly, Raoul's is gold. But do you remember the other 2 and then Caden?
Oh, Jesus. I think Caden might be blue.
You're right there. And I'm going to ask you why.
Why is Caden's blue?
Yeah.
I don't know. I had to come up with a colour in the moment. Do you want me to give you a bullshit reason?
No, I don't want you
in the moment, it was just blue.
I don't want you to improv during Beyond the Eclipse.
I mean, I could make blue a thing. No, I just improved a colour. I'm like, I'm just going to pick any colour they don't pick. I want to say red for Sultana.
Wrong way around.
Oh, it's for Lafian.
Yep.
Oh, okay.
He chose red for some reason, and Sultana chose yellow.
Oh, okay.
Yeah. And I am definitely putting this to the side, so when I do the Beyond the Eclipse before the story, or what
Beyond the story? I don't know.
Whatever the prequel episodes are called. I'm gonna
before the beginning.
Before the beginning.
Yeah.
When I sit them down, I'm going to ask them their favorite color, and then I'm going to ask them to explain it 100%.
You're awful.
Yeah, and then I do have one question.
Yes.
So the 3 of them, Balance, Raoul, and Sultana, they're the outside circles. They're the ones bound to Caden.
Correct, yeah.
What can Caden do? Because I don't feel like it's very gone into.
I think I did mention it in the episode. Caden knows where they are at all times.
Yeah.
So he knows whether they have decided to split up and go for a runner. He knows whether they are alive or dead. When he is within range, he's able to access the message of them. Mm-hmm. This is mostly, the spell was made mostly so that Caden can guard them, so he can be responsible for them, so he can find them, so he can deal with them. No matter where they go on this plane of existence, he will find them if he wants to.
I feel like it's missing just like a tad little bit more that would make it more of a utilitarian guard spell.
I would like for him to have bonuses on like hold person, but he doesn't have access to that. He's the worst guard to put them in charge. He has a green flame sword, and that's about it, yo.
But you're on the path that my brain thinks. My brain thinks like I would like if I were gonna introduce this in some manner to a campaign. I would definitely go for like, oh yeah, the guy in the circle, the middle of the circle, he counts as being next to, like within 5 feet of all of you at all times, as long as he's within 300 feet, like the message range.
Yeah.
So he can always do a touch spell or whatever the fuck he wants if you're doing bullshit.
Yeah, like considering like your future uses of this, and if I ever were to write this up at some point, then yeah, I would probably include more guard related things in it. I just hadn't really needed to use or needed to exactly think beyond, hey, I want to get the message together, I want to make sure they're bound together so I have something I can play with later in the future if needed, and if they were to stray from the path, I can bring them back on board because Caden will be able to find them. Like I didn't really have much beyond that, but also, you know, this binding spell was written by someone in, you know, probably over the course of like 2 or 3 hours, from the moment that this was asked. Hey, can you do this? Sure, what do you need it to do? I need it to affect Caden if they fuck up. Okay then.
All right. For some reason, it's gonna stab the warden, but fine.
Well, that was part of like actually, funnily enough, when Squash steals Demi's notes, there are notes in there about the binding spell, like giving benefits and like, hey, how do I make this negatively affect this person if something was broken? Like that, I've managed to like figure out exactly why it would fuck up Caden later on, but I knew that like, hey, they're attached to Caden. I need to make this affect him if they fuck up. Like he is my stick and he's also my carrot. He's both in this situation.
Makes sense. Once the wall's up and Raul goes unconscious from the psychic damage.
Yeah. That was unfortunately a side effect of me. Again, not looking at character sheets. I'm like, oh, I'll just roll 2D something. Oh shit, everyone's unconscious. My bad.
Well, it works out perfectly because Sultana runs over to heal Raul with the rest of her lay of hands.
Yeah.
And in that moment, Balance can like slink away to have like a little moment with Demi.
Yeah.
Which works surprisingly well.
Oh my god, that interaction was so funny listening back to it. What was that? Magic.
That was magic. You're so fucking quick. Like, there has to be a pause there that Neil deleted because that was so good.
There wasn't. That was just me full on sarcasm.
What the hell was that? That was magic.
That was magic. What? Yeah, it's magic. What do you want?
And it's kind of funny because...
What did you build a wall?
because Balance literally said that exact same thing to Neil, to Raul, just a couple of seconds earlier, where Raul's like, what the hell was that? And he's like, that was magic, Raul. It's so funny that he gets turned back on him.
Yep. That was full on sarcasm mode. It was kind of fun though.
And then she goes on to talk about the idea of the gods and heads. And in this moment, you knew that Demi has Grumsh in her head?
Yeah, so I knew at this point that she could hear Grumsh. So the meta of the situation was slightly different from how it is now. Like she had taken the voice of Grumsh away from Damas so that Damas could live a more normal life.
Because in your world, all orcs have an innate connection to the Grumsh god.
Well, yes and no. Back at that time, the answer was no. Like they didn't necessarily always hear Grumsh. When Thirsty turned up and he went, yo, all of us can hear Grumsh. We all have Grumsh's blood in us. Ha ha ha. He changed the world subtly. So I've had to think and retcon a little bit to make things work better in line. But at that time, he could hear Grumsh and she had taken it from him so that he could hear Torm better, because Torm is Damas's god. So at the time she had just that voice in her head, but they'd put it behind a wall so that she wouldn't be overly affected by it. She was also linked to a Great Old One, which was where she had her warlock powers from, and I decided to leave that patron questionable until whatever I had to bring it up, and hopefully I never needed to. But as it is, things in the game develop and change, and since I'd never brought it up, I could change behind the scenes a little bit of exactly how that worked. So rather than her being a patron of a nameless Great Old One and hearing the voice of Grumsh behind a wall so her brother could live a better life, it ended up being like, hey, she took Grumsh's voice from Damas so he could live a better life, and Grumsh as a result of that is also why she has her Great Old One powers. So I had to change things a little bit, partly because of Damas, partly because of the story that developed. So I just left, especially back then, a lot of things open. Some things I had written down, some things I didn't. A lot of things I've just left open so I could manipulate and change them as we went through the game.
All right, so Demi only has one voice in her head, and that's Grumsh.
Correct, yeah.
But when you wrote this scene, Demi had two voices in her head.
So the reference to the fact that she knew two gods was the fact that she had Grumsh and a Great Old One. She couldn't hear the Great Old One because that was over at Damas at the time, but it never came up, so I got to remove that. And later on, you can say, yeah, of course she knows more than one god. She's now part of the seven. Shit went very quickly at this point, so yeah.
A little bit of rewriting.
Yeah, a tiny bit of rewriting. I mean, her story has always been that she and other people across the world would sacrifice themselves to give us more time. Like, that's always their story, and I'm not gonna change that for shit. Well, you guys might be able to change it, but I'm not.
Gonna do my best.
Fuck you. Fuck you taking my soul first, my ultimate death away from me. Fuck you.
Somebody had to. Okay, so Demi basically then goes on to say, now Lindgren owes me a favor because I cast this binding ritual, but you guys are going to do me that favor because that's what Lindgren told me was going to happen.
Yep.
My brain has a little bit of a feedback loop there because you earlier said somebody in the Witches Society owes me a favor.
Yes.
What like, did nobody owe him a favor, or is he saving up his favor, or like
well, it's that kind of like, I know someone in the Witch Society, they could probably do something for me, we're kind of on friendly terms, maybe they owe me a favor, like maybe I can wingle this out. And Demi in her very straightforward fashion of like, okay, well, I still need shit done, so you do this for me. Yeah? So, you're going to do this for me? Yes, you're going to do this for me. Great, wonderful, great, moving on.
So Lindgren, helped her move once, and then he was like, hey, do this binding rituals. He's like, these are not equivocal things.
Yeah, like, you once picked up something I dropped on the floor because it landed on your foot. This is not an equal thing, my friend.
And then he's like, okay, fine. You can use them for your thing first.
No, I hadn't figured that out. It was just a turn of like, oh, hey, I know someone there, maybe they owe me a favor. Maybe I can get this out of them. So
I genuinely, like, because I'm listening to these kind of back to back, and my brain's picking up like not plot holes, but just kind of phrasings that don't completely match up.
Yeah, they're not. A lot of things back then weren't beautifully planned out because I didn't exactly know how well this was going to go and if this was going to be more than 3 or 4 recording sessions. Like, yeah. I mean, I guess that is something I should probably bring up and mention and talk about. I guess is that we had been part of a podcast that recorded a couple of sessions and then fell apart, and we were all really into it. And as a DM, I had only done and was partway through a campaign, like a singular campaign. I'd never run anything more than that, and it was in a completely different system, a completely different setting with very different people. So I didn't even know if this was going to be a thing that carried on. And yeah, I spent 2 weeks in a room preparing for the world and some of the story elements that came up. But there was also, I'm not going to prepare more than I absolutely need per session. It allows me to be a little bit more flexible, and also I don't want to put more effort into this if this isn't going to really be a thing. Because everyone has those stories of this is a campaign that started and then fell apart. And unfortunately, that's more often than not the truth. When you start playing games, especially online, even in many home games, there are more campaigns started for me than are finished. And to be honest, the only campaigns I think I've ever finished are the ones that I've run.
Yeah.
Sad, but true.
I don't think I've ever finished a home game that didn't come straight out of a module book.
Yeah.
It's otherwise the home games just keep going, they just keep wrapping on them. And there's a part of me that doesn't mind those not wrapping up because it wasn't about the journey, it was it wasn't the end goal. What's that phrase?
Yeah, the goal is to hang out, have fun with your friends at the table, and if you don't play the game, it's not the end of the world if you don't finish the home game. Because you're there and you're having fun with your friends, and that's the point of it. And I get that, but there's also the inner part of me that really wants to play this game, really wants to have these experiences, and god damn it, guys, put down the booze and the chips. I just want to play.
Well, as the DM and as the beast wrangler, you have been able to cat herder. You've been able to keep TLD going pretty well. We're releasing episode 151 soon-ish.
Yeah, in
when
a couple
this
of
is
weeks.
Recording.
I think like 3 weeks from now, I think, is when we're releasing it.
And so far you've been doing an excellent job.
Thank you.
And I look forward to finishing the story out with you.
Yeah, me too. I as much as I love this and I love this interaction and I love hanging out with my friends and playing this game and having everyone hear it and enjoy it as much as I enjoy playing it and running it, for the most part, I genuinely am looking forward to the story wrapping. TLD's been a big part of my life, but I also know that for it to be a good story, it has to come to a good end. And there is a part of me that also needs that. I'm slowly losing my mind, not finishing this story. My brain is already at the end. Like, it saw the end at like episode 130. I'm like, I'm just near the end. I could just finish it. And then I went, yeah, but you can't, can you? you need to finish this story properly, don't you? There's more left. There's more plot points. Do it. I'm like, oh no.
Why's your inner voice a little bit Irish?
I don't know.
Can you?
You can't finish it, can you? I don't know. I don't know why my own voice is that, but yeah, I'm looking forward to the end, and I can see it, and I just need to hit it, and then I will be able to relax a bit, at least for a while, and then I'll start a new story.
Hey,
maybe.
The hope is that by the end of this year we will have finished recording it.
Oh, I'm hoping so. Yeah.
By the end of next year, we will be releasing the last episodes.
Yeah, I think so. Currently, we're like 6 months ahead, I think, give or take.
Yeah, but we've been following. This is off table talk. Sorry,
yeah,
guys.
Our bad.
Back on track.
Back into what we were doing.
So after Demi and Balance have the little interaction, Balance goes back into the room and he's adamant that Kythea needs to come with them.
Oh my god. I did not want Kythea to go with them. I didn't want her on their journey. I don't want more NPCs that I can't handle.
And you're very lucky because all that Neil and Casey do is bully Arch.
It's so funny.
I just wrote it bold. Team bullies Balance for wanting to bring Kythea.
Wants to pork the lunch lady. It's been a while since I've had pork. I was dying.
Oh, it's such a good interaction. You can hear Neil smiling.
Shit-eating grin. It was so funny.
He's so proud of him fucking himself.
There was nothing but smiles and laughter around the recording table at that point. Holy fucking shit, that was so funny.
It's so good. And then eventually Caden brings in Kythea in a kind of like a desperate effort to like Balance, leave.
I think
it
might have been a desperate effort for me to move the episode along, actually. Like, okay, all right, we need to move on, folks. And
we have Lathian, we have Balance, and Sultana actually see through her disguise.
Yeah.
And that cues music.
Yeah, I know that it's not technically how the illusion spell is supposed to work. I'm not really supposed to ask for that kind of shite, and it is kind of can be done on passives, but I was like, no, I want to reveal to them fairly early that Kythea is not who she appears to be. Like, it's why I kept dropping hints. And I was like, no, I'm going to give them a couple of shots throughout the first few episodes where they can try and see it. And I believe that I made Lathian roll once in, I think it's episode 2 before they get hung, about trying to see through her, but he didn't hit the mark at the time. So yeah, I just wanted them to be able to see that so they can kick off the next part of the story.
By the way, like, props on the description of Kythea, like, you completely leave the word tiefling out of your mouth. Mm-hmm. And while I was not seeing a tiefling, I was seeing something akin to a tiefling. Like, there was one descriptive element that just stuck out to me, which was pronounced knuckles.
Yes.
I don't know why. It's just like, oh, that's a descriptor I didn't expect, and kind of sticks in your head. Yeah,
I don't really know why that came out. So my idea of tieflings, again, this is my complete ignorance of D&D really and all the lore, because I can never keep that straight, which is why I make up my own shit as I go along. Most of that was from my vague memory of what tieflings were supposed to look like, and for me, they were a whole thing that I explained to Lathian when he digs for information later on. Is like, the rumors are that they have demon blood in them, which is bollocks, of course, but like, I kind of wanted their appearance to give that idea, hence why the horns are the way they are, which is why the hands are not quite as you would expect human hands to be, or like traditional tiefling hands. And I wanted her to have hooves. Like, I wanted that. I wanted tieflings to have that. So I was like, fuck it, they're having it. It's done. Over. Conversation over.
But how do they wear boots of elvenkind then?
Boots of elvenkind are magic.
But they can't fit on hooves?
Magic.
Okay, cool. They become horseshoes.
No, so, she can wear shoes. It's fine.
I'm sorry. I just have to mention this because
fucking horseshoes. Fuck you, Ethel.
This is just in my head now. You described them very demon-esque.
Yes.
And we recently watched a little dumb video about the idea that like evolution for some reason has produced crabs like 8 different times.
Yeah, that's right, yeah.
And my brain's going like, oh, like everything always eventually evolves back into demons. Like, that's just in my head for some reason. I just want to get it out of my head.
Also in my head canon, she can have scales. But I realized later on, like, no, I can't have her have scales. So I'm just having it as something that is like slightly in their skin, like just like around their eyes and stuff, and in certain places they'd have like some scales. I wanted to keep that aspect of that, and I don't think I ever used the word scales, but in my headcanon she has some around her eyes, and that's it.
I don't think we have any intense art of Kythea, so
I don't think we do. No, I think the most, I think the only piece of art we have for Kythea is the one that we got done for Valentine's Day this year.
Oh yeah, right. That's What is Balance's childhood friends? Ninverna. Oof.
Yes.
Yeah, it's Ninverna on the beach.
Actually, it's not. So I spoke with Kessie. So Kessie has done a lot of phenomenal art for us. Some of it has been completely prompted off its own back because it enjoyed listening to the story, and that's where a lot of our initial art comes from, is Kessie just wanting to do it. It's actually, funnily enough, where the Eye of Winter picture comes from with Squash and Demi. That wasn't planned. That was Kessie going, I want to give you this. This is based on your two's holiday that you showed. I'm like, oh, Kessie, I love you. This is amazing. Can we use it? But yeah, like Kessie had drawn this this image of the two elves waiting for a boat arriving or going away. I thought it was arriving, I was wrong. In Boots, and it was based on Lafian's backstory episode, and I thought it was Ninverna and Balance waiting for Talvin to arrive. And after speaking to Kessie was like, no, that's Lafian and Talvin, and they're watching Ninverna leave.
What?
So the one that's kind of like bending around and has more light on their face is Lafian, and the other one is Talvin. I'm like, God damn!
No, Talvin is buff in my mind.
Talvin is buff as shit, but he's buff for an elf.
No, he's like a dwarf that grew up in my mind.
No, he's not. So
Talvin will pop your head like a
grape. No, Talvin is not buff. Talvin is built and he has tone.
Right.
He is like the only real buff elf that we have currently at this point is probably Lindrin. Lindrin, I think, described as built like a brick shit house.
Yeah.
He is buff as shit. He probably is a dwarf that is overgrown. Like that is him. But mostly elves are tall and lithe, and they have to do some real work to become anything other. So no, Talvin is tall and lithe with some muscle. So yeah, I was incorrect in that artwork.
All right.
That's what I thought it was.
And we have Kythea remove this piece of jewelry that reveals its true form.
Yep.
And it is later like hinted that it's an heirloom. And this kind of comes back in not major way, but it comes back in a Kino episode, future Kino episodes.
Correct. Yes.
How much, like, was this just a piece of like note on a paper somewhere, or
it was just note on a piece of paper? Like, she has this thing, it gives her the illusion of being a human, which is why she has to tuck her tail in, which is why she has to be very careful with the way that her hair looks, the way that she interacts with people. She has to be necessarily a little hands off. And of course, like having jobs like being in a kitchen with knives around and hot things, like the chances of you interacting with a lot of people on a frequent basis is fairly low. So there was that. Like, the only thing I really had was necklace, heirloom, illusion. That's the only thing I had written down there. And because of my wonderful way of not taking good notes or being well prepared, I can now spin this into something else later, should I wish.
And then I remember like writing down when the episode started, like, why does Kythea not have her accent? And then when she drops the illusion, the accent comes out, and I was like, oh, okay, that's great. That's great.
That is intentional on her behalf. She didn't, for example, if she got seen as a tiefling, this is something I kind of vaguely thought about, like, why would her voice change? One, she's from Kino, so her accent would be slightly different. But if she ever got rumbled as in her tiefling form, she would be able to still hide in her human form. Because her voice would sound different. Like, it would add that little layer of illusion, but not actually be illusion, is something she's doing.
Yeah, makes sense.
Yeah, and also I was like, hey guys, how do you like my American accent? And off cam, they ripped the shit out of me, those bastards. They were like, what the fuck is this? I'm like, that's That's my really soft American I got taught at school and drama.
That's what American
And they
sounds.
were like, nah, that's terrible. What the fuck is this? So I've now given up, and it is now my Kino accent. It's not American, it's Kino.
It's a good accent. I like it.
Well, Travis thought it was so different that he cast me twice in the same thing. Once using my American voice and once using my voice. So he thinks it sounds different enough. I'm like, all right, yeah, fair.
If I've learned anything from the voice acting community, not voice acting, like the podcast audio drama community,
Yeah.
they love reusing voices.
Yes.
I don't remember what podcast it was that I was listening to the other day, but I heard the same person play like 3 different characters. One main character, then 2 just kind of off-cam characters.
Yeah, like, I think for me, the biggest remembrance I've had of that, I believe, is Wolf 359, where the main character, I love the show, but I completely forget everything about it. Like, I enjoy listening to it. I obviously didn't absorb much other than it's Wolf 359. He plays 2 of the 3 main characters. One of them is a slightly Russian-ish accent, and one of his more American accent. But he also voices something else in that series that isn't a minor role. It's a pretty big one. It just isn't in it all the time. And I'm forever just like, holy shit, dude! Like, this is
Are
incredible.
they supposed to be clones or
Nope. One is just him.
brothers?
Nope. One is just him, and one is some random Russian dude that gets put on their thing. I think he's Russian anyway. I don't remember exactly. But their voices are so different. Like, I didn't know they were different. They were the same person. Like, holy shit! This is where my inner voice actor's like, oh my god, I am so jealous. I have a huge crush on this.
All right.
And Sarah Golding is actually another one who consistently she's in everything ever, and she has so many different voices. She's so talented. She's the voice of Githa in the crossover episode.
Yes, she is.
And she's about to come up in an episode called The Healer, which is filled with exclusively voice actors.
Yeah, we kind of just got kicked out for that one.
Yeah, I threw Aether out of the house so I could record that because I didn't want him to know what was in it. So yeah, we have voice actors in that. There's Kareem, who's the voice of Ruwanma. We have Sarah Golding, who's the voice of Githa in the crossover, and we have Karen Heimdall, who is the voice of Elazar in the latest episodes.
Sounds like I have to get this episode out soon because
Yes,
you just
do.
this cannot come out after the healer.
Oh, it could come out after the healer.
Yeah, so Kythea takes off the necklace, the illusion drops and all that good stuff. And then you drop Kino.
Yeah.
Had you given the players a map of the world at this point?
I don't know, actually. I think I did. Yes, I did. So I had a really crude paint map.
I remember your paint map. It was glorious.
It was bright colours. There were information written all over it. Because of the way that the players wanted the information, they wanted what their characters would know. I had to make 3 separate maps. Actually, I ended up making 4 separate maps at the very beginning. I made my world map, which had literally everything on it. It had Daemarius on it. It had Githa on it. Had the Olcath Islands on it. It had all the small islands at the side. It had Kino and Discora. It had the Fey Island in it. Like, it had literally everything. And it also had crude maps of where the Earth Duct tunnels are, like the major thoroughfares. And each player had an individual map which had no information on Kino other than Kino. It was missing some of the Olcath ones. If you weren't from Daemarius, you didn't have the Daemarius Island. Nobody had Githa at all. And in Discora, they only had the place names that they knew, that they had visited in their past, or I felt that they would probably know about. So I ended up making 4 separate maps, and they were brightly coloured. There were, this is vaguely green to represent some sort of forest, and here's the water, and this grey blob is a is a mountain. That was the map we started out with. And then when we hit the Patreon goal and we got it done by a cartographer, I'm like, oh shit, I actually have to release the whole world to everyone? Shit. And that's when Arch went, what the fuck is this island? Pointing at Githa, because he'd never seen it. He'd no idea it was there, but nor had anyone else. So they knew that Kino was a thing based on the map. They just didn't know anything about it, other than that's where all of the starting races that weren't accessible to them were. Like, this is where everything else is, because I don't know enough about them or their lore right now to be comfortable running you through this. So that's why I put them all. It comes down to my utter ridiculousness of just not knowing enough when I started this.
And in this moment, of course, you reveal the Kino Discora War.
Yes.
That gets brought up a little bit.
Yeah.
Now, I'm just going to admit that my memory might be a bit spotty.
Mm-hmm.
Has the beginning of the Kino Discora War been discussed or revealed in any way?
Not up to this point, no.
All right. That I thought so, because you mentioned like nobody really remembers anymore why the war started, but they know roughly why it ended. It was something big came and fucked up everything.
Yeah.
And that's been referenced in a episode.
So at this point, I knew that a war had kept these two separate. That the Olcath Isles were kind of the link between them, and that's where the orcs were. And I also knew that having defeated the Dracolich was why they had agreed to keep the two continents separate, to keep the pieces of Marnak and Kel separate from one another, so that they could look after them, keep an eye on them, and that whatever they were warring about, either it be resources or it ended up being a bigger plot point, whatever it was, they had agreed at that point, hey, we are kind of on good terms right now. Let's part as kind of a temporary truce. Like, you don't come fuck up my shit, I won't come fuck up your shit. We stay separate, we look after our pieces, and that's it. We never have to talk to each other again. I hadn't solidified exactly why the war had started. I hadn't solidified exactly how they had gotten to this truce, other than, hey, they defeated a Dracolich. From that point, they decided to stay separate. Like, there were some things I had, but most of it I didn't. And to be fair, I still don't have a solid reason for why the war between the two things started. I have a vague idea, and I'm hoping to explore that in Forgotten Heroes, but we'll get there.
Have we reached the Forgotten Hero picture on goal?
Yeah.
Really?
Yep, I have it cast. I have 3 people solidly cast. The 4th one is a question, and I haven't actually written the game yet. But I do at least have 3 characters, 3 players sorted out with their characters. So it's in the works, and it's in a different system, because canonically it makes sense that it's not actually D&D, and you'll find out why when we get to it.
Yeah. I just want to mention that I find it kind of entertaining that when we were talking about D&D, when we were talking about TLD off air before Beyond the Eclipse was even an idea, I did mention to you that like once TLD is over, like you're gonna have to explore a little bit the Kino Discora War, because that is a perfect setting for a prequel.
Yeah.
With of course the problem that you're gonna know how it roughly ends, but again, journey, not the destination.
Yep.
And you went like, nah, that's never gonna happen. And I keep poking you, and I'm like, hey, remember, there's like a Dracolich during the whole thing. Like, there's a upscale, like, there's a bunch of stuff you can have fun with. And you're like, nah. Like, once TLD is over, TLD is over. And then, like, one day we're just eating lunch, and you just go like, I think the Dracolich War might be a really good one-shot.
Well, it was like, to be fair, the one-shot is not about the Dracolich at all. Sorry, one-shot, it's a mini-series. Okay. It will just play as long as it plays, until my characters all die or whatever. No, it has nothing to do with the Dracolich. It's just set in that time, and it's a fairly significant event that they are... I'm hoping I can get them to do, and if not, then I will just have to figure out how to make that work. But yeah, like... I'm very hesitant to write more in this world, partly because I need TLD to be done, and partly because I think when the story is done, it should be done. It should be over. I don't want to do a series in a year's time after TLD is finished exploring the Dracolich Wars, because I haven't written that. I don't know exactly how this works. I don't exactly know how one becomes a Dracolich, other than they probably shouldn't. I don't know exactly how they decided to enforce the treaty separation. Like, I don't have that solidified in my mind, and I right now don't have the energy to do that. And also, I don't want to fuck up what we have. We have a good story right now, and it's a self-contained-ish story. And I want that to be what this is. If anyone else wants to have a beautiful Dracolich story set 5,000 years in the past, then go right ahead, but that's not my story to tell. My story to tell is a really short-ish, potentially short. I keep saying short and hoping it's only 2 episodes, but I know the players I've cast and they're really good, so I know this is probably going to be much longer. It will be what it is. I just don't want to keep adding to my workload. I need it to be done, guys.
Of course. Talking about getting things over with, let's finish up episode 4. There's not a lot left, but there are a couple of things I do want to put touch down on.
Okay.
And it is that Kythea came to Discora saying she was looking for somebody like her sister, and she seems to hint at the idea that her sister's a psychic.
Yes.
Why do I not have memory of this?
Probably because I think I only bring it up once or twice in the entirety of TLD, because we don't actually explore much about Kythea's sister at all. She's fairly significant to the story, but we never really explore that very much. It's something that hasn't really been asked much about, and she's very hesitant to talk about it. I mean, she's talking about the death of her sister. It's a very big thing for her. But yeah, her sister is a psychic. She is very much like Laffian has an inhabitant. Let's put it like that. And she had learned things from her sister and from the being that is there. Yeah.
And did Kythea's sister, she's dead at this point, or?
Yep. So everything with Damara being Kythea's sister, everything about that had already been set. Because Marnak, everything about that had already been sussed out of my mind, and I also had to figure out everything about Kells before we started. I didn't have to, I wanted to. I wanted to figure out exactly what happened to these 2 mythical heroes, good or bad, from the old wars, and them being split up and put in different places. I never thought I'd have to deal with where Lightburner Kells' stuff was, because I was like, all right, she's already assembled, that's dealt with. Damara is just a part of that. She's a side effect, collateral damage of Kells being put together.
Right. Fuck. You're making the giant assumption that people remember or know that Kythea's sister, whose name is Damara,
yeah.
She had monarchs basically polar opposite his.
Correct, yeah.
His, not enemy, but
the counterpoint.
Yeah, his counterpoint in their head, and then of course they got put together and things.
Yeah,
happened.
so Kells, when I started this, I'm like, I already figured out what had happened to Kells. Well, Kells is always going to be I never labeled any of the characters good or evil. I just don't do that. Everyone is shades of grey. I mean, even Demi is a complete asshat in various situations. That's always been the case. The same with Damaz, actually. And the same with Caden. Everyone has slightly suspicious things that they've done, and that's just human nature. But Kells is an entity unto herself, as is Daichin. They are the 2 characters that I'm happy to ascribe the tag evil on. Kells being brought back was not good. It was not a good part of the God's plan. It just ended up going that way because Kells has free will, the same as Marnak does. And Marnak could have also started working against them, but their relationship with Laffian developing as it did. Yeah.
We'll get there when we get there.
We'll get there when we get there. But yeah, I'd already figured out Kells. I'd already figured out Damara's situation. I already figured out why Kythea was here. So all of that was set in stone before we started.
All right. And then a little plot drop that I don't know if they pick up on in a future episode, but I was just shocked, I tell you, that nobody touches on. Kythea knew the apocalypse was going to happen?
Yep.
I don't think anybody picked up on that.
Nope. Absolutely no one.
Not even.
I don't remember being asked about it. Kythea, why did you know this was happening? I think that kind of gets hand wave in episode 5, I think it is, when she explains why she knows about Laffian. It can be picked up from context clues, but I don't think it's ever directly addressed.
All right. And then we have the episode and drop the 3rd heir reveal.
Yes.
And I think it's kind of funny that Kythea very casually just goes I was looking for the 3rd heir of the Laffian throne. No, not Laffian. Dathomir throne. Blah, blah, blah. And then they keep talking and then the apocalypse things get dropped. And then Arch just kind of goes wait, 3rd?
I should be 2nd. That's why I found it difficult to find you.
It was very entertaining.
Yeah, it was great. I loved it. Obviously, I'd known about the existence of Pintor since before we'd recorded anything, and I've been holding on to that because I knew it would get dropped fairly early. I also knew who would be playing Pintor, and he knew before Arch did that he was going to be around.
It's ridiculous. It's ridiculous that you planned it that far ahead and then it happened that late.
Yeah, genuinely scary enough. And I think I mentioned it when we actually bring Pintor into the game. I think it's shortly after you disappear or as you turn back up again for the second or third time. But yeah, like the episode with Pintor receiving the marriage thing from Rowena to give to Laffian, that was genuinely recorded a year before Pintor even turns up in the game. Yep. So that had been such a long time, and we went through character creation and I figured out motivations and overall story arc for him. We just never got to it, and I hinted at Pintor turning up in episode, I think it was 29 or 30 or 31, when Titus turns up and starts shouting doom and mentions like, hey, they may be married in the future. That's a direct reference to the fact that I'd already plotted that out. Like, that was already there. So yeah, there are some things that have been planned for a really long time and never managed to get dropped. So,
oof. All right, and that's the end of episode 4.
Yep.
I think it's a solid episode. It has very much happening in it, and I'm not surprised people get hooked on TLD in just a couple of hours. It's like there's so much going on. The characters are all very entertaining. It's good stuff, man. It's good stuff.
Yeah, I especially in the early episodes, I really wanted the characters that they met, the NPCs, to be vastly different from each other. Either through voices or through characterizations, and also because we meet some very important characters this early on. We meet Lindgren, who is not massively important, but he's the overall puppet master for a while. Caden is vastly important, and I always knew that he would be. Demi is fairly important. Kythea is massively important at the beginning, and will probably become again a bit later on. The characters that we meet early are important. I didn't quite realize how important some of them would end up being to our players, but you never know who, as a DM, they're going to latch onto. Yeah. So I didn't over prepare some of their background information, but yeah.
That happens. All right. Then I want to thank everybody for listening. This was the 4th episode of Beyond the Eclipse. And
this is the 3rd episode of Beyond the Eclipse.
Yes, you're right. It's the 3rd episode of the 4th episode. Oh boy, this is going to cause me brain headaches.
Oh yeah, especially because I think some of the episodes later on may not have so much to talk about, so we might need to double up again.
Yeah.
If we ever get onto massive fight ones, I think it's the Battle on 5 Fronts. That's a 2-parter episode, so that might be just one episode we talk about it in.
We'll get there when we get there.
If we ever get there.
We will. And I want to remind everybody that the Beyond the Eclipse episodes are currently being released on Patreon schedule. So if you want to hear more, consider joining our Patreon. And if you want to reach out to us, if you have any questions that you want V to answer in the future, please send me some, because currently I am writing all of my questions myself and it's very difficult.
So if you have any episode specific questions, why did you do this? How come this came up? I mean, yeah, you can be dicks and go, hey, here's a huge plot point hole. Did you know about this hole? The answer is I probably do, and I just don't want to talk about it.
It's a side effect of being in a role-playing game. There will be plot holes.
Yeah, actually when you play home games, there often are just plot holes that you don't think about until much, much later on. But that's because you're improvising a lot of things on the fly, and a lot of plot holes come out when Demi talks. I'm not gonna lie, a lot of shit comes out when she's around, which is why she isn't around a lot to start with.
Alright. Is there anything else?
Nope. I think that's it. Other than props to Neil for the music. God,
yes.
As always.
As always.
You transcend our voices. Thank you. I think that's it, probably. Thank you all very much for joining us, and thank you, Patreon supporters, for basically forcing us to do this. This has been fun.
Yep. Looking forward to doing episode 5 and 6.
Yep.
Until then,
bye.